Hello, sewing friends. My name is Ramona. Thank you for visiting the Turbo Per channel, where we talk about sewing and cats. Today, I wanted to share some tips for success on making an heirloom nightgown. I used a pattern from Martha Pullen Heirloom Licensing. I took this course online years ago, many years ago, in fact, and it was part of a curriculum for the Martha Pullen Heirloom Sewing Teacher's Licensing course. There were videos and printed patterns. I particularly like making nightgowns because they're very practical, they're useful, and they're elegant. Um, I've made this nightgown before and I wore it out, and so I needed to make some new ones. So I decided I would make it again and show it to you. One of the variations that I use when I'm making a garment with a yoke is that I like to have my inside yoke seams covered. So I cut out linings for the front and back yokes. I just cut out duplicates of the yoke that's on the outside, and I stitched it to have linings on the inside to cover those seams. That way there's no rough edges in contact with your skin on the inside seams. This pattern is really unique. It's the only nightgown pattern I've seen that has this decorative overlay. And I'm showing you a detail here so that you can see how this is set up. So the decorative embroidered overlay with the Madeira border lies on top and is stitched into the side seams and the neckline of the yoke. The fabric that I used was a very soft cotton that has a kind of a fleecy, soft texture on the inside. So the outside of the fabric, the right side of the fabric, is very smooth and shiny that you can see, and the inside of the fabric is very soft against the skin. It feels wonderful, but it really frays badly. As you can see on the edges are really, cut edges are really raveling. Um, so for this reason, I constructed, when I was doing the side seams and around the neckline, I decided to use a serger to prevent having problems with fraying when the garment was washed. In the original pattern, there was always an option of doing a French seam on the inside skirt seams of the fabric to, prevent this problem. But I really like to use the serger. It's fast, it's quick, and it really solves the problem when you have a fabric that's really wants to fray this badly. The original pattern had a embroidery design included for the yoke overlay that was a cut work design that basically had eyelets in it, surrounded by satin stitching. And because this fabric frays so badly, I did not want to use a cut work design, so I substituted a different embroidery design from Martha Pullen that's in my collection to use instead. This is one of the skirt seams. showing the 4-thread overlock. This garment has already been through 2 washer dryer cycles, and as you can see, there's a minimum amount of fraying and raveling in it, thanks to this overlock serger stitch. This pattern calls for mini piping around the neckline and the armholes. I have to say I'm not really fond of piping, but it does give a nice finished look. A different option would have been to have used a scalloped edge lace. I did not have a scalloped edge lace that was really appropriate for this, so I decided I'd go ahead and just do the piping. Um, I One of the things that you can use in order to have a nice seam finish is to use fusible thread in the lower looper. In this case, I used a 4-thread overlock stitch with the press and bond fusible thread in the lower looper. And after I stitched around the neckline selvages or edges and the armhole edges, I simply took an iron and pressed those down onto the yokes, and it really held nicely. I've only put this garment through the wash and dry cycles twice. It seems to hold it down pretty well. If I'd been really thorough, I would have taken a hand needle and thread and just done a little whip stitch all the way around to make sure these hold down. But just to let you know that this is a nice option to use, particularly if it's a garment you're not going to be washing a lot. And in this, I'm showing you the lovely embroidery design, and the seam allowances have been pressed. The mini piping shows up nicely around the armhole edges and the neckline edges, giving a really nice finish. And here's the completed top of the nightgown with the Madeira border. And I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope that you've gotten some useful tips from this video. I guess a final thing I would mention is when doing a simple garment like this, I like to cut the garment out twice and make 2 of them if I have enough fabric. That way you have an extra one or one that you can give as a gift. So with that final thought, thank you for watching and happy stitching. Have a wonderful day.